08:17 a.m. local time, Caribbean Sea. The horizon is clean. Blue water, pale sky, and a wind so light it barely wrinkles the surface. On the bridge of the U.S. Navy destroyer, everything looks routine. Another steady transit through open ocean. Another day of standard watch standing. Another stretch of calm that sailors learn not to trust too much. Inside Combat Information Center, the glow of screens tells a different story. The ocean may look empty, but the radar never agrees with human eyes. It sees the lanes. It sees the distant traffic. It sees the patterns. Most contacts are ordinary, commercial shipping far beyond visual range, a few slow movers, some predictable tracks that belong exactly where they belong. Then the screen changes. At 08:19 a.m., 5 new surface contacts appear, not gradually, not one at a time. They populate almost together, 5 returns in a loose spread, spaced just far enough apart to look intentional, not accidental. They're moving faster than fishing boats. Faster than casual patrol craft. The spacing is clean, the geometry makes sense. The radar operator narrows his eyes, then expands the scale. No AIS, no identification, no commercial profile. Just 5 silent hulls, steady speed, steady headings. The watch supervisor leans closer, not alarmed, but alert. In these waters, you see Coast Guard units. You see local maritime patrols. You see plenty of small craft that don't broadcast because the equipment is broken or never installed. But 5 contacts appearing like that, together, organized and electronically quiet, is different. Mark and track. The order comes calmly. The words are routine. The meaning is not. At 08:21 a.m., classification begins. Speed, radar return, formation spacing. The analyst doesn't need a perfect ID to know what they're not. They're not random. They're not drifting. They're not confused. They are moving like military vessels move when they don't want to be misunderstood by their own side, and when they don't care if they're misunderstood by anyone else. By 08:23 a.m., the track history is long enough to confirm the pattern. All 5 are maintaining disciplined motion. No wobble, no indecision, no civilian steering. This is professional. On the bridge, the officer of the deck doesn't change tone. That's the rule. You don't add drama to the ocean. You add clarity. Report new contacts to the captain, he says. Not because the ship is threatened, yet, because this kind of silence demands attention before it becomes a problem. At 08:25 a.m., the first long-range optics come online. The camera tightens. The image steadies. The sea shimmer fades into shapes. Gray hulls, naval paint, angular superstructures, and flags Venezuelan. 5 warships, spread across multiple bearings, closing distance at a controlled pace, fast enough to matter, slow enough to look normal if someone wanted to pretend it was. The destroyer continues on course. Speed remains unchanged. That steadiness isn't stubbornness. It's policy. Professional restraint at sea is not passivity. It's control, because the moment you maneuver, you start writing a story the other side can quote later. At 08:27 a.m., the first hail goes out on open maritime channels. Calm, clear. Standard language, no response. At 08:28 a.m., the destroyer transmits again, same channel, same professionalism. No emotion, no accusation. Just identification, location, and expectation of safe passage. Still nothing. The Venezuelan ships don't answer, but they also don't drift away. They hold their geometry. They hold their pace. They close the distance like a door closing softly, slow enough that nobody can claim it was slammed, but tight enough that everyone hears it. At 08:31 a.m., the first shift happens. It's subtle, just a few degrees of heading change from one of the Venezuelan ships. On the horizon, it might look like nothing, like natural steering. On radar, it is obvious. The change places that ship on a better line to reduce separation, not collision course, not an intercept you can label hostile, but it's the first movement that stops being neutral. Inside CIC, The watch team updates the projected closest point of approach. The number shrinks. The time to CPA becomes real. The geometry tightens. The ship's internal mood shifts, not to panic, not even to stress, just to focus. Focus is what you do when rules limit your options and precision becomes the only advantage. At 08:34 a.m., the captain arrives on the bridge. No dramatic entrance, no shouted orders. He's briefed in clipped facts. 5 Venezuelan warships, no AIS, no response to hails. One contact altering to tighten CPA, others maintaining formation. The captain listens, looks at the horizon, looks at the radar, looks at the calm sea that doesn't care about politics. Then he gives the order that defines the tone of the next hour. Maintain course, maintain speed, continue documenting. No turning away, no speeding up. No show of force. Because the greatest show of force, when you're legally correct and operationally steady, is refusing to be shaped by someone else's pressure. At 08:38 a.m., the formation becomes clearer. What looked like 5 separate contacts is now resolving into roles. 2 ships drift toward the destroyer's starboard side, staying far enough to look safe, close enough to communicate. 1 vessel lingers aft, offset, watching the wake and the stern. The remaining 2 push forward, not directly ahead, but angled so their presence sits in the destroyer's forward sector, where ships instinctively feel crowded. They are building a box. Not a full encirclement, not a blockade, nothing that would justify escalation, but a pressure posture. At sea, distance is language, and this is a sentence being written in measured increments. At 08:41 a.m., the destroyer hails again. No response. At 08:43 a.m., a second Venezuelan ship adjusts course, slightly, deliberately, so that the destroyer cannot ignore it without admitting the geometry has changed. Inside CIC, the analysts keep their voices even. Everything is logged, every degree of change, every knot of speed. Documentation isn't paperwork here, it's armor. At 08:47 a.m., the destroyer's electronic support measures pick up the first emissions. Low power, surface search, not a targeting lock, but no longer passive. 1 Venezuelan ship has gone from silent presence to active sensing. They're painting the destroyer, not aggressively, but meaningfully. At this range and in this context, emissions are communication. The YO team records frequency, pulse repetition, and timing. The captain doesn't react publicly. He doesn't need to. The ship's posture stays steady, but the ship's awareness sharpens. Because when another navy chooses to emit, when they choose to announce their sensors, you're no longer dealing with coincidence. You're dealing with intent. At 08:52 a.m., the forwardmost Venezuelan ship increases speed, not by much 2 knots. On paper it's minor. In reality, it changes the timeline. It changes the CPA. It compresses decision space. Now 1 Venezuelan hull is projected to pass inside 2 nautical miles, close enough that even small course corrections become messages. At 08:54 a.m., the destroyer transmits a safety warning. Professional phrasing, standard language, nothing that can be replayed later as an insult, no response. On the bridge wing, binoculars show deck crews, helmets, people near rails. Some movement around forward areas, not weapons manned, not a visible hostile posture, just readiness. Watching, they want the destroyer to know they are not casual. The destroyer wants them to know it is not intimidated. At 08:57 a.m., the box tightens. 1 ship edges closer on starboard, another holds port quarter. The aft ship remains in a trailing position that feels like shadowing. The 2 forward ships adjust so that the destroyer's forward options feel narrowed. Still no collision. Still no hostile act, but the space is being shaped. At 09:01 a.m., the captain requests a full updated picture. The response is immediate. 5 contacts, coordinated, no comms. Active radar detected. CPA trending down, multiple contacts holding pressure geometry. The captain nods once. Then he makes a decision that doesn't sound like escalation, but is. Prepare the aviation detachment. The ship does not announce it. There's no broadcast, no threat, no warning. It's simply readiness made real. Below deck, the flight crew moves with practiced precision. No running, no shouting, just quiet work that can become action in minutes. On the surface, the destroyer still looks like a ship doing nothing unusual. That's the point. At 09:05 a.m., the Venezuelan ships change again, not dramatically, not suddenly, but together. One ship on port side increases speed slightly. A starboard ship adjusts heading inward by a few degrees. The forward ship holds a line that now feels less like passing traffic and more like a controlled demonstration. The destroyer hails again, English and Spanish, no response. The silence is now a tactic. At 09:08 a.m., a second set of emissions is detected, brief, low-power sweeps from another Venezuelan ship, still not fire control, still not a lock. But now more than one ship is actively illuminating the area. This is no longer just observation, it's boundary testing. At 09:10 a.m., the destroyer's bridge team refreshes collision avoidance and safety protocols, not because they expect a crash, but because they refuse to be the side that looks careless. The ship's legal position matters, its recorded behavior matters, and if this becomes a story later, the facts will matter more than anyone's narrative. At 09:12 a.m., the closest Venezuelan ship closes further. The CPA drops again, inside 1 nautical mile. If neither side maneuvers, that threshold matters. Not because 1 mile is inherently dangerous, but because 1 mile is intimate at sea. It forces interpretation. It forces decision-making. It forces either side to either accept the pressure or change the script. The destroyer remains steady. The captain knows the risk. Maintain course and the other side might push it further. Alter course and you give them what they want, proof that their pressure shaped your movement. At 09:14 a.m., the captain makes the call, launch the helicopter. The words are calm, final, no drama, no raised voice. On the flight deck, rotors begin to turn. The sound is immediate, unmistakable, cutting through the quiet sea air like a signal flare you can't ignore. For the first time since this began, something changes that all 5 Venezuelan ships will feel without needing a radio. Because a helicopter isn't just an aircraft, it's a message, it's speed. Its eyes, its documentation, its reach, and it removes ambiguity. At 09:16 a.m., the helicopter lifts off. It climbs to a controlled altitude and moves forward, angled toward the most forward Venezuelan hull. Not aggressive, not overhead, not provocative, but present. Its sensors come alive, electro-optical zoom tightening, stabilizing on hull numbers, bridge windows, deck activity, everything recorded, everything time-stamped. From the aircraft, the ocean looks different. You can see lines and spacing. You can see which ship is leading, which is supporting, which is shadowing. You can see intent in relative motion. Ships can play geometry games. Aircraft make geometry obvious. At 09:18 a.m., the helicopter transmits on maritime frequencies, calm warning, neutral language, professional tone. This is a United States Navy aircraft. You are operating in an unsafe manner. Maintain safe separation and alter course to avoid close approach. Then the same message in Spanish. The words are not threats, they're documentation spoken aloud. If nothing else, they create an audio record of warning before consequence. At 09:20 a.m., the Venezuelan ships hesitate. Not all at once, not dramatically, but the forward vessel reduces speed slightly. Its wake shortens. The line that had been compressing now relaxes by a fraction. A ship on the arc widens laterally, opening distance. Not retreat, not surrender, recalibration. At 09:22 a.m., the helicopter holds an orbit, not hovering directly above, not chasing, not buzzing anyone, just present, visible, persistent. The camera keeps rolling. The feed streams back to the destroyer. CIC updates the captain. Contact 1 reducing speed. Contact 3 increasing range. No new emissions. That last part matters. Emissions stopped. The Venezuelan ships are becoming passive again because active sensing now costs them politically and operationally. The destroyer didn't fire a shot. It didn't maneuver. It didn't escalate with aggression. It escalated with presence. At 09:25 a.m., a brief burst of radio chatter is detected from within the Venezuelan formation, internal coordination. Not directed at the destroyer, they are talking now. They weren't silent because they couldn't speak. They were silent because they chose silence, and now that choice is changing. At 09:27 a.m., the lead Venezuelan ship alters course, just a few degrees, but enough to break the tightest line, enough to widen the CPA. Enough to say, without words, that they are not willing to cross the next threshold with an aircraft watching. Others follow, the arc loosens, the box becomes less defined. Individual vessels begin to behave less like a single posture and more like separate ships sharing space. The helicopter remains overhead until the shift is unmistakable, then it turns back. At 09:31 a.m., the helicopter recovers to the destroyer's deck. Rotors slow. The deck crew secures it like it's routine, but it wasn't routine, it was a lever, and the lever worked. On radar, the Venezuelan ships remain present, but their intent has changed. No inward moves, no tightening angles, no synchronized adjustments, just watching. At 09:34 a.m., the captain orders a final comprehensive status review. The report is clean, 5 contacts still tracking, separation increasing, no safety violations in progress. No active sensor emissions detected. The destroyer continues exactly as before, same heading, same speed, no victory lap, no theater. Because changing posture now would acknowledge the pressure mattered, the lesson is quieter than that. At 09:38 a.m., one Venezuelan ship breaks farther south, another drifts west. The remaining vessels fall behind at increasing range, their wakes angle away instead of inward. No apology comes, no explanation is offered. At sea, movement is the statement. Inside CIC, the logs are closed, tracks are saved, video is archived, emission data is stored, timelines are locked with precision. This is not just for the captain. It's for any future question that begins with, "What happened out there?" Because modern naval confrontation rarely ends with explosions. It ends with documentation. At 09:42 a.m., normal operations resume. Watch rotations continue. The ocean returns to its calm deception, but everyone who stood that watch knows the truth. Calm water can hold sharp moments. 5 Venezuelan warships applied pressure without firing a shot. They used silence, spacing, and motion to test boundaries. They moved close enough to create decision points, but not close enough to justify escalation. The destroyer refused to yield, refused to overreact, and refused to be shaped. And when the moment demanded a response, it chose the kind that changes the equation without lighting a fuse. Not force, not panic, presence. The Caribbean stays blue, the sky stays clear. The ships fade into distance, but the lesson remains. In international waters, control belongs to the side that knows exactly when to hold steady and exactly when to make the other side blink.